Hi everyone, we are Group 3 and we would like to present you our dilemma, the IKEA situation. So the situation basically is that a German man, Jan, and his Spanish neighbor Sergio plan a trip to IKEA. They agree to meet at 9:30 a.m. and Sergio was responsible for organizing a car large enough to transport the furniture. The problem is, Jan arrives early and expects everything to be prepared according to the agreement, and Sergio arrives late and without a car, explaining that he thought they could organize one spontaneously. As a result, both of them have different expectations about what was agreed upon. And the conflict basically arises from different expectations regarding time and responsibility. Jan assumes that agreements are binding and should be prepared in advance, while Sergio takes a more flexible approach and expects that problems can be solved along the way. And this leads to a misunderstanding. And we used some methods from the class to analyze this, and Rosa will take on from here.
So I will start by using Hall's concepts to analyze our dilemma. First, we have high context versus low context communication. On one hand, we have Jan, who is more low context. He wants clear, direct, explicit, and structured communication. He expects all details to be clearly confirmed beforehand, which means having a fixed departure time, having a fixed car, and knowing who shares which responsibility. Sergio, on the other hand, is more high context. He relies more on the situation, their relationship, and their shared understanding. Not every detail needs to be set directly for him. He assumes that the plan can still adapt to the situation at hand. Which means Jan waits for clear confirmation, while Sergio assumes the plan is understood through the situation. Each of them understand the plan in their own way and agree in completely different ways. As a second concept, we have Hall's monochronic versus polychronic time. Jan is a monochronic. He values planning, punctuality, and structure. For him, one task goes after another, which means to be ready at the fixed time, in our case, 9:30. Sergio is more polychronic. He treats time as more flexible and adaptable. For him, a delay or last-minute change does not mean the plan fails. He can multitask. They don't take each other's approach to time management into account, which can lead to irritation and frustration. As a result, Hall helps us see that this is not simply bad planning, it is a clash of communication style and orientation.
Another diagnosis is based on Hofstede's uncertainty avoidance, because Jan shows a very high uncertainty avoidance, so he prefers planning and structure and organization, and this is very important for him because he's just very more comfortable with everything being organized and he needs the structure to feel safe. Sergio shows much lower uncertainty avoidance, so he prefers flexibility and improvisation and spontaneity, and he doesn't need this sort of strict planning, and he's very comfortable with ambiguity. And then tension arises because of their different approach to planning and managing situations that can make the other party sometimes feel overlooked or even disregarded. Our last diagnosis is based on Schopenhauer's universalism versus particularism, because Jan is a universalist, so for him an agreement is a rule that applies no matter what. And he needs this regulation to guide him, and he's very into commitment. Sergio is a particularist, so for him an agreement is very flexible and very adaptable. So he judges what to do by the circumstances and the relationship. For him, his agility is the key to any situation. And then the tension stems from them seeing the word agreement in a different light. But here for Jan it's just a fixed rule, and for Sergio it's an adaptable guideline. And that's just because of their two different cultural settings.
Okay, let's now talk about the reconciliation. To reconcile the conflict, the goal is not to decide who is right, but to understand how both perspectives contribute to the misunderstanding. If we look at Jan first, he prefers structure and a clear expectation. For him, when something is agreed on, it usually also means that it should already be prepared. He assumes that the other person understands it in the same way, so he doesn't always clarify it again. Sergio, on the other hand, approaches the situation more flexible. He assumes that not everything has to be fixed in advance and that things can be handled along the way. Because of that, he doesn't see the situation as a problem in the same way Jan does. So the issue is not one person's behavior, but the difference in how both interpret the same situation. The middle ground, therefore, is about combining both approaches. That means keeping structure where it's important, but also allowing flexibility when needed. Using Pinto's 3-step method, this means first reflecting on your own expectations, then understanding the other person's perspective, and finally finding a shared way of working. In this case, that would mean making expectations more explicit. For example, clearly defining what organizing a car includes while still allowing changes if they are communicated. This way, both structure and flexibility are included and the risk of a misunderstanding is reduced.
Okay, building on Lydia's reconciliation, my part focuses on turning these ideas into 3 actionable guidelines. We want to show you exactly what these rules look like in a real, practical dialogue in the slides. First, confirm critical logistics 24 hours in advance. Since organizing a car meant strict pre-planning for Jan, but improvisation for Sergio, they now send a quick text message the night before. Sergio simply writes, "Hey Jan, just confirming, I secured the van for tomorrow." This gives Jan predictability while leaving the execution to Sergio. Second, keep a 15-minute buffer but communicate major delays early. An agreement to meet at 9:30 includes a small flexibility window, but if Sergio gets heavily delayed, he calls at 9:15 and say, "Hey Jan, traffic is bad, I'll be 25 minutes late. Please wait inside." This honors Sergio's polychronic flexibility but respects Jan's time. Third, always agree on a quick plan B. To bridge high and low context styles, they prepare for unexpected changes. During planning, Jan asks, "What if the car falls through?" And Sergio answers, "Then we will spontaneously rent a shared van via app at IKEA." As you can see, these guidelines don't force anyone to change their cultural identity, they just create a shared conversational framework to cooperate smoothly.
Okay, so how do we transfer this into our study abroad program? Basically, studying abroad requires students to adapt to a new cultural and social environment. Understanding local customs or communication styles is essential for successful integration. The example of Jan and Sergio illustrates how cultural differences can influence planning and understanding of responsibilities. Similar situations can occur during an exchange semester. To avoid misunderstandings, it is important to communicate expectations clearly. Confirming agreements and remaining open to different ways of working is essential. At the same time, a balance between structure and flexibility can help build successful relationships and improve cooperation in multicultural settings. So the key takeaway is cultural awareness and clear communication are essential skills for a successful study abroad experience, for example, in Thailand.
So, to bring this home, next semester, well, actually in 7 days, I'm actually going on exchange to Thailand. So, I asked myself, what would I run into? The biggest one is communication. In Thailand, people often avoid saying no directly. A problem might come out as a pause or a polite smile instead of a clear answer. And coming from a direct background, I could easily read a maybe as a yes and then be confused if nothing happens. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's the same high and low context gap we saw between Khan and Sergio. Thailand just sits even further towards the high context side. So our whole IKEA story is basically a preview of my everyday life there. My copying strategy is to slow down and read the situation instead of forcing a yes or no, and to ask gentle follow-up questions rather than pushing for bluntness. And in Ben's model, the growth move I want to make is into adaptation, actually adjusting my behavior to fit the culture, like softening my directness, but without losing who I am. That's the goal. Adapt, don't erase. And on that note, thank you all so much for listening. This is our presentation from Group 3.